Good afternoon. This is Maritza Castillo from Bogota. I would like to introduce an excellent human being. He is an English teacher, Oscar Franco. He teaches English at the Pedagogical University and External University. He is going to take a part of this interview. Um, our topic is learning to teach culture in EFL and ESL classroom.
Okay.
Thanks for this opportunity to stay here in this moment. Well, I would like that you share with us a little bit of your teaching experience. So I'm going to ask you some questions according to this topic.
Okay.
Thank you. First, what do you think that is culture?
Culture is all the elements that are part of the traditions and the ideology of a certain country or of a certain group of people or an ethnic group. Culture is all the beliefs and all the concepts that people have about their life, about their work in general.
Okay, thank you. How do you think include culture in the methodologies that you use in your English classes?
I work for universities, and some of my students are very close or are very acquainted with American culture and with British culture, either because they have been there or because they just see it all the time on the TV and series that they watch and everything else. So it's not every time we have like a cultural issue or something, or I teach something, a cultural aspect, is not completely foreign for most of them. It's something that they have either seen before on TV or in the media, or they have experienced as part of their trips and their experience. Um, the way to include it in my class is basically, it depends on the topic and it depends on the function that I want my students to perform, really. But as much as I can, I try to include bits and pieces of cultural knowledge, either of history or the way of doing things from in other countries, as part of my teaching practice.
Okay. The third one, what do you think about the process to teach English as a second language? And it is possible in Colombia?
It's absolutely possible. I think I'm a clear example of that. When I managed to travel out of Colombia, I had already finished my major, and I didn't have a perfect level of English, but I was able to communicate. When I got there, I was able to communicate with everyone, and it took me a few weeks to get to understand what they were saying, because listening is always the most difficult part. But I'm sure that you can learn very good English in Colombia. It depends a lot on the students' motivation, the intrinsic motivation, and how committed they are to the process.
Okay. Do you think that our own culture can encourage the students' learning process in a foreign language?
Yes, I think one of the misconceptions that many people have about learning English and about learning culture, or about the English learning knowledge knowledge or acquisition process, is that you have to kind of like forget about or put aside your own culture so that you can understand the other culture. And it's not like that. Actually, the more you understand your culture, the easier it is to understand other cultures, and hence it becomes easier to understand how the language works, because many of the things of the language depend largely on culture. Like idioms, idiomatic expressions. That's something that I always teach my students. Like for example, for parts of the body, when I teach higher levels, I don't only teach just the parts of the body, but idiomatic expressions with the parts of the body. So you're a pain in the neck. Um, you know, um, you're pulling my arm, you're pulling my leg, some things like that. And then I always go like, you know what? We have exactly the same thing in Spanish with other words for the same idea. So instead of saying you're pulling my leg, you're saying me estás tomando el pelo. And then they see the relationship. So it's not like it's completely foreign. And the more we understand our own culture and our own way of living, the easier it is for us to understand how the foreign language works, because it's very related sometimes. We're not completely isolated from other cultures. We are in a globalized world and everything is interconnected right now.
Okay. So it is relevant as an English teacher to know about different elements about culture.
I think it's relevant, um, but you don't necessarily need to know, to have a master's degree in cultural studies. But it is relevant to know the most relevant and the most important features of the language that you're teaching. I mean, like if you're not only English, but if you're teaching French, you need to know a little bit about French history, and you need to know a little bit about French cuisine, and you need to know a little bit about French pop culture, you know, because that gives you, again, that gives you the tools, and that gives you the elements to be able to explain and understand different elements of language that are embedded in the culture, and back and forth. I mean, so it's, I don't think it's, you don't have to be to have a master's degree on that, but it is necessary to know a lot about the English culture in this case.
It is necessary to know the foreign language culture in order to speak the foreign language.
In order to speak it, I don't think, again, it's not, it's an element. You need to know about the culture so that you understand the language, and therefore you can speak it. But there are many people who have never traveled to any foreign language country, and they are very competent users of English. I mean, and we're not only talking about Colombia, but other countries, in China and other places around the planet where English is the lingua franca. And probably these people have never traveled. They've never been to London or to New York, but they have had enough interaction with foreign people, not only native speakers, but with foreign people, that enables them to understand anything that comes at them, because they have already that cultural knowledge. So it is an important element. It's definitely an important element. You need to know. You need to be aware of things. You need to be aware of aspects of, like, pop culture, history, um, holidays, traditions, things like that. But also it goes beyond that. It goes beyond that, because it's not only about food and holidays, but it's also about how it works. What happens with taxes? How much taxes do you pay? Those kind of little things that makes us understand also why English works the way it is. I mean, the way it works. So I think it's necessary.
Okay. Finally, methodologies play an important role in second language learning.
I think methodologies are the basis of our practice. You need to have a strong methodological structure, academic structure, in order to be able to teach English properly. Many of the or many students that I have had, have had bad experiences either with teachers or with other institutions, mostly because of the problems that they have had with the methodologies. See, so I don't think there's a 100% perfect methodology. Actually, what I think is that the best methodology is a combination of everything that you can grab from, and whatever works for your student, just go for it. I mean, if I mean, I have worked in some institutions that they discourage the use of translation in English classes, and I'm like, oh yeah, of course. I mean, I'm not going to translate every single word they say, but